You a disrespectful ass girl. You disrespectful is what you are. I don't care what your mother did to you. I don't care if she sold your to an army. You still better respect your mama.
I wanted to speak on some damaging forms of conditioning that are very common in a lot of Black households, whether they're American, African, even Caribbean. This clip of Tokyo Toni really closely reflects and is actually a very good example of this very toxic mindset that is also very deeply ingrained in the culture of respecting our elders no matter what, whether those are relatives or whatever. And it is very toxic because it teaches younger people to take mistreatment with a smile. And people tend to confuse obedience with respect. Those two are absolutely not the same thing. True respect is mutual. It's mutual. It's not some one-sided submission thing. Something that I've also noticed is that people confuse age with being a better person. A lot of older folks are legit not good people. A lot of them are bitter as hell because their lives did not turn out the way they wanted them to, got anger issues, etc. So it does not make them more decent humans. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that you should yell at older people. But if they're acting funny towards me, trust me, baby, I'm not gonna yell, because God has been working on me in terms of my temper. I've learned to just be silent in the face of disrespect. But I will give them a nasty look. I will. So I'm not saying disrespect elders. We should still honor them, but we should also hold them accountable because they're not perfect people. And it also ties into things like talking back. If you try to defend yourself, even in the slightest way, suddenly you have an attitude and you're disrespectful. This is why sometimes I really envy kids that grew up with white families, because I think, well, it seems that they grew up with so much more emotional freedom. You could express yourself and set boundaries and even disagree without it being seen as disrespectful. And I'm sure it's not that everything was perfect for them, probably not, but the contrast is undeniable. I think it's mostly about having a mind of your own, and anything they don't understand or aren't familiar with, they have a problem with. Suddenly, you are the issue. And don't get me started on the manipulation, whether that's emotional or spiritual. If you grew up with religious folks, you know what I'm talking about. I remember being in my teens and I was very alternative. But because they were not willing to understand it, they proceeded to call me demon possessed. And they convinced me that I needed extensive prayers. So that's the kind of spiritual manipulation I'm talking about. I also feel like a lot of folks weaponize the Bible, and their favorite line is the verse that talks about children obeying their parents. But what they don't realize about that verse is that it says children obey your parents in the Lord. In the Lord, meaning the obedience does not extend to harm or emotional control. And they leave out the part that says, do not provoke your children to anger. And a lot of what they do is pure rage bait. Something else they do that is so toxic is the guilt tripping and the isolation tactic. If you grew up in a Black home, you know that if you had fun today, you're not having fun tomorrow. You're not. And the word friend triggers them. It triggers them so bad. And there was just way too much guilt around having fun. And everybody kind of grew up second-guessing themselves about simply existing, stepping out and making memories with people, laughing with friends. And the issue wasn't even so much about getting permission. It was about asking for permission. There was so much fear around asking. There was just so much overthinking, and it was like walking on eggshells. Why have you made it that I'm so uncomfortable to approach you to ask for something as simple as stepping out? There's an issue in the relationship, And what Black folks don't seem to understand is that socializing is such an important skill to have that you're supposed to acquire from a young age. It's not just going to appear out of nowhere. It's a muscle that you build. And networking and being able to interact with people can make or break your career. And now all of a sudden, adulthood has hit and you're in a space that requires connection, but you're trying to figure out how to say hello to someone without it being awkward. It's an issue. A lot of young adults today have poor social skills. You have poor social skills, and it goes back to having been a prisoner in your own home when you were younger. A lot of them see it as love and being protective, but really it's not. It's just fear-based parenting and control. And when the kid gets older, they start to wonder why they're not close. Like, It's hilarious. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? You're not emotionally safe. That's why you find a lot of times you could open up to them and be vulnerable only for it to be later used against you in an argument. They need to heal. There's a lot of generational trauma, and I think it's very evident with some folks that say things like, oh, I went through this, so you can take that route as well because I endured, and so will you. And it's like, that is pain. That is unresolved trauma, and you're not building resilience. I'm not going to be stronger. I'm going to be just as hurt. So it's just so toxic. And I think the same thing goes for folks that use putting a roof over your head and food on your plate as leverage when really it's duty, Not to mention the folks that see their kids as extensions of themselves or as future insurance. That's why I want to have responsible love. If ever I decide to have kids, even though life is unpredictable, but it's good to have your things in check, like whether it's your pension, your insurance, your savings account, so that your child will not have to carry the weight of your unpreparedness. And the economy is so bad today. People are just trying to stay afloat. There's so much to deal with. So having an aging parent on top of all of that I don't even have the word to describe that. It's exhausting, I would want my kid to take care of me because they want to, not because they feel like they're obligated to. So, that's how I see it. I guess maybe not everyone thinks the same. Now, to be clear, I am not encouraging disobeying your parents. Please still honor them. All I'm doing is calling out unhealthy expectations and guilt and toxic forms of conditioning. And a lot of people are going to go through these things, so you shouldn't be blind to it. You should be conscious of it so that you could even learn to protect yourself, maybe through emotional distance. Also, my folks are good people. They did their best. I know they did, even though they have not been perfect parents, because parents are people and people will make mistakes. So it wasn't perfect, just like I made mistakes and they forgave me. So I forgave them too. So unless it's extreme cases, I think people can always redeem themselves. There's always room for improvement when you want to do the work. That's what I think.